All right, I'm going to do two sessions today, one on sketching using markers, including using dead markers. Never throw out your markers until they cease to make any kind of mark. And then we'll get into doing some inking with brush and pen as well. So here we go. I think I'll start with, usually as my warm-up drawing, I go with a tried and true subject matter that I'm comfortable with, which is dinosaur. I'm going to roughly sketch out the figure. And I basically do my drawing from the inside out. I've got a pretty good sense of the anatomy, and I'll freeform with the pencil. And for the benefit of a sketch, that's about all I need for pencils right there. And if you're new to this, I don't advise starting with the heavier marker, but I usually like to go in and lay my boldest portions of the outline with a Sharpie first. Now this is different than what I'll do if I'm drawing on a commercial job and working my studio. This is the approach I take to sketching, either for pleasure for myself or if I'm at a comics convention doing sketches for people. That's where I'll tend to work with markers. Important to be in a well-ventilated room, because wonderful as the odor of these Sharpies are, they're not good for you. Now I tend to just put in the lines for the underside of the creature at this point, because I want to use a pen with a lighter line weight for the top of the forms. Okay, sketched him out. Now I'm going in with a thinner point. This is not an anatomically correct Tyrannosaurus Rex. This is me drawing what's in my head, which would not pass muster with the scientific community. For those who are not anal dinosaur nuts watching this, Tyrannosaurus Rex had 2 fingers. It's Allosaurus and the other carnosaurs that had 3 fingers. They did not have opposable thumbs. We still don't really know how they use these things. What were they good for? They couldn't reach their teeth to pick them. Okay, and now I'm going in and banging in a bit of surface detail, scale patterns and so on, just really loose at this stage still. And what this is on the foreground here is the remaining rib cage of something that this guy's been feeding on. Part of why I use these as warm-up drawings is they're just fun to draw. The first drawings I ever did as a kid that I remember showing to adults and they recognized what it was I was drawing were dinosaur drawings, and I think that's part of why from a very young age this is what I love to draw. A lot of young cartoonists will gravitate, or young artists will gravitate to a subject matter they love. I remember one of my classmates in high school, Brenda Cheney, who could draw horses like nobody's business. So that was what she would sit down and draw with real facility. They would just pour right out of her. And I think we all have our druthers. If I had this skill drawing covered bridges, I'd probably be a world famous Vermont artist. Okay. Now usually at this stage with a sketch, I'll start going in with, as I mentioned earlier, I never throw out a marker. These are some tired markers, soon for the junkie, but until they're really dead and gone, I can get some interesting gray tones out of them. And they don't have a lot of use at this stage, but they do give me another drawing tool to work with. This one's really just about had it. Let's see if there's a little more life in this. And you've got to be careful when you're going in using these drying out markers, because sometimes when you first uncap them, you'll get a true black, and if you go in thinking that you're going to get a gray, you can really create problems for yourself. This one's right about where I want it. It's giving me a nice gray tone. So I'm going to use this gray tone to start delineate details that I don't want to draw with line, which would be skin textures, scale, suggestion of scale patterns, underlighting. You may have noticed I had left this heavy line here. This was so that this would be a little bit underlit, because there's always reflected light coming off of the ground, even when we're not conscious of it. And at this point, laying in the tone is when this really becomes more concrete for me. A little bit of a sense of weight and form. Marker, I think, is still, yes, true black. So this one I'd save for being in the darker tones. When I was a kid growing up in northern Vermont, one of the TV stations, I don't remember if it was the Burlington station or the Maine station, used to broadcast John Nagy Learned to Draw. And he was one of those guys who could draw with this kind of facility, covered bridges and sugar shacks and all those kind of landscape things. And I used to copy him as best I could keep up with my little pea brain as a youth. But once I started doing convention sketches, I realized that that was the kind of thing Nagy did all the time for his audience, was working with that kind of speed and dexterity, and that's what I tried to emulate. As you can see, a lot of this is just mark making, and you know, having done it for 30 odd years now, I just sort of instinctively start making marks on paper come together. Voila! Okay, time to pay a little bit of attention to the landscape. Doing landscapes is the easy part because I don't really have to do anything but lands and simple patterns. Ferns are great things for